Good morning, everyone. So, in the previous classes, we already completed all the theory topics about the structures, various structures present in the neck. So, today, what is the topic? It's a practical class. So, to identify what are the structures present in the midline of the neck. So, for that, we are going to dissect the neck. So, how we are doing the dissection, we'll see one by one. So, before that, we have to see the surface markings of the neck before reflecting the skin. See, here I am showing the surface markings, not surface anatomy, because in the next class, we will come to know the details about the surface anatomy of each and every structure of the head and neck. So, today I am going to show only the surface markings. So, through this skin, what are the various structures? It may be bone or muscle. So, what are those structures we can able to find out, means palpate through the skin. Then, how the structures of the neck are arranged. So, as the topic is midline structures, but actually the structures in the neck, how they are arranged. So, usually the structures in the neck are arranged in the midline only, but they are in the form of compartments. So, what are those 4 compartments? We'll see. So, how they are arranged. Then, afterwards, it is followed by dissection of the neck. So, in this skin incision, how to incise the skin and how to reflect the skin, and immediately what we will get? Fascia. So, what are those 2 fascia? Superficial fascia and immediately beneath that deep fascia. So, one by one, we have to separate. Okay. After that, we'll see the deeper structures. So, what are those deeper structures? We'll see one by one in the dissection. Then, after that, very important here, the anterior median structure. Actually, the midline structures means it stands for anterior median line structures. Because those structures present in the anterior median line, they are having some importance because those structures are, means we are using for the particular structure or a particular area to rescue the patients, means in emergency patients like acute respiratory obstructions. We are using one landmark. So what is that landmark? What is the importance of this knowledge about the anterior medial line structures? Now we are going to know. So these are the objectives we are going to see. So what are the surface markings of the anterior medial plane? Before that, what is the extent of the neck? Because now we are going to dissect the neck. So what is the extent? Just I want to briefly explain. If you want to see from anterior median line, it extends from this bony prominence. What is this? Symphysis mentae. So from the symphysis mentae, a line extends along the lower border of the mandible, reaches the angle of mandible. From the angle of mandible, see the cursor showing the angle of mandible. From the angle of mandible to the mastoid process, an imaginary line. There is no any bony structure or any landmark, but we are giving an imaginary line from the angle of mandible to the mastoid process. So this is the upper boundary for the neck, where it is limiting the face and neck, whereas below it is limited by the entire extent of the clavicle. So the clavicle medially articulates with the sternum, manubrium sternum here. So what is this? This is the sternoclavicular joint, and laterally it extends, and here the lateral most extremity of this clavicle, where it is articulating with the acromion process of the scapula. So what is the joint? Acromioclavicular joint. Okay. So this is the lower limit of the neck. Then what is the anterior limitation of the neck? So anteriorly, if you draw an imaginary line, there is no any boundary, clear-cut boundary. But so what is that? The imaginary line we are drawing from the symphysis mentae to the suprasternal notch. Means this is the upper surface of the manubrium sternae, which forms a notch, which is known as suprasternal notch. So if you draw an imaginary line from the symphysis mentae to the suprasternal notch, so this is limiting the anterior extremity of the neck. So among these 4 boundaries, we have a quadrilateral area. So now we are going to dissect this structure. So before reflecting the skin, what are the structures we can palpate exactly in the anterior median line? So if you place your index finger exactly on the symphysis mentae, then just down your finger along the median plane. At one place, you will get a depression. So that depression is nothing but mainly means represented by a bone. What is that? Hyoid bone. And at the level of third cervical vertebrae. So at C3 level, what is this bone? Hyoid bone we can identify by a depression here. So what is the depression? Exactly, this is the junction between the base or floor of the mouth and front of the neck. So if you down your head, this is a junction. Exactly, what is this junction? Above, this is the floor of the mouth, right? And front of the neck. So this is a exact junction that represents the hyoid bone. At what vertebral level? Third cervical vertebra. And from here, if you down your finger in the midline, and at one place you will get a bony prominence. Actually, it is not a bony prominence, it is a tough structure. So what is this structure? Is a prominence formed by the articulation of the two laminae of the thyroid cartilage. So here what you will get? A thyroid angle. Means the thyroid angle means where the two anterior borders of the two laminae are meeting in the median plane, where it forms projects an angle. So forwards means where it forms an angle which is known as thyroid angle. So the thyroid angle is more acute in the males, so because it is 90 degrees angle. Whereas in females it is not that much prominent because the 120 degrees angle is there. So what is the structure, prominent structure you can palpate through the skin? The thyroid cartilage, where it forms the thyroid angle and is also known as Adam's apple, right? And just to place your finger further below, suddenly you will get a anterior arch, means further bone tough structure. So what is that structure called? Cricoid cartilage. Here you can see this is A represents the thyroid angle, whereas B represents the cricoid cartilage. This is the anterior arch of the cricoid cartilage. Okay, so this is the structure, a tough structure we can palpate through the skin in the anterior median plane. Then from now then onwards, if you pass your finger downwards, you see it passes just in front of the tracheal rings, and the tracheal rings are related in front by the isthmus of the thyroid gland. And further you see have a depression here and is made by a triangular area. See, this is the suprasternal notch. So this is the suprasternal notch, and you can find out on either side this is a prominence made by the sternal fibers of the sternocleidomastoid muscle, right? So these are the prominent structure you can expect in the anterior median plane. Okay, so here arch of cricoid cartilage. See, this is the anterior arch of cricoid cartilage. Between the thyroid and cricoid, there is a membrane, cricothyroid membrane. And what kind of membrane? It is an elastic membrane. Okay, and it is strong in the midline where it is known as conus elasticus. And either side of conus elasticus, this is one more prominence. It is formed by the muscle. That is a cricothyroid muscle. Even you can palpate that muscle either side of this. So what is that muscle? Is the cricothyroid muscle. Okay, and immediately beyond this cricoid cartilage, what is the depression here? Indicates the first tracheal ring. Okay, so the first ring of the trachea, and beyond that isthmus of the thyroid. Why? Because the opposite is second, third, fourth tracheal rings. We can identify the isthmus of the thyroid gland, right? And beyond that, you see this is the suprasternal notch of the manubrium sternum. Clear? Then similarly in the posterior median plane, what are the bony structures or what are the prominent structures? Means they are nothing but surface markings of the posterior median plane of the neck. Okay, so posteriorly, what is the extent of the neck in the midline? This is the external occipital protuberance, and below there is a prominent structure formed by the spinous process of the 7th cervical vertebra. So because of this prominent spinous process, the 7th cervical vertebra is also known as vertebra prominens. So this is a one landmark to count the spinous process. You see, it is very important landmark. So this is the junction, okay, between the thoracic vertebra and the cervical vertebra. So you can identify. And above that level, you see there is a depression. You cannot expect the spinous process of other cervical vertebra because the length of the spinous process of other cervical vertebrae are compared to with seventh is less, right? Along this line, we can identify a groove, which is known as nuchal groove. So along this groove, what is the important structure is that? So the in between spinous process, there are two ligaments, interspinous and supraspinous, right? So this supraspinous ligament here in the neck region, it is forming a well structure which is known as ligamentum nuchae. So the ligamentum nuchae extends from the seventh cervical spine to the external occipital protuberance. Clear? And either side you see this is a prominence. So what is this? Trapezius muscle. So this is a trapezius muscle, superficial, covering all the deep muscles of the neck. So this is a surface marking found on either side of the nuchal groove. So what is this? Trapezius muscle. Okay. And on the side of the neck, one more prominent structure. See, if you move your head towards the other side, so the opposite side, the prominent structure here in this picture you can identify. So the head movement towards the left side, what happened due to contraction of the right sternocleidomastoid. So this is the right sternocleidomastoid. Now you see this cylindrical structure, now it is divided into a diagonal structure, means it is not a vertical structure, oblique structure. So that oblique structure divides this quadrilateral area into two triangles. So what are those two triangles? Anterior triangle, and behind that is a posterior triangle. So these are the surface markings we can see in the posterior and anterior median plane. So what is this line here representing? The imaginary line from the symphysis mentae to the suprasternal notch. Okay. Then this is a line representing the anterior border of the trapezius muscle. Then this is a line representing the lower border of the mandible, an imaginary line from the angle of mandible to the mastoid process. So this is a upper imaginary line. And below it is limited by the clavicle. So this is a quadrilateral area. Now it is divided by means of sternocleidomastoid into anterior triangle, posterior triangle. You see here, for anterior triangle, base is above, whereas posterior triangle, base is below. Okay. So the quadrilateral area divided into two triangles. Now, as I told in the previous slide, the neck structures. See, whatever structures present in the neck, which are arranged in the midline. Okay. So in the midline, how these structures are arranged? And these structures are arranged in the form of compartments. Okay. So what are these compartments? The most posterior compartment is vertebral compartment. So what is this vertebral compartment? It is made up of all 7 cervical vertebrae and enclosing a vertebral canal for the cervical part of the spinal cord. So this vertebral compartment consisting of cervical vertebrae enclosing this spinal cord, cervical part of the spinal cord. Then the muscles which are arranged in front of muscle means in front of vertebrae, prevertebral muscles, and either side of vertebrae, paravertebral muscles, and posterior to the vertebrae, posterior vertebral, otherwise called the deep muscles of the neck. Okay. So as you know, the in front of the vertebra, what are the important muscles? The prevertebral. It includes longus colli. Colli means neck. So longus colli, it takes origin from these bodies of the cervical vertebrae. And this longus colli is divided into cervicis part. Okay. So it is going to insert here. So the two muscles, capitis and cervicis longus. Then either side of vertebra, paravertebral. So the paravertebral muscles indicates in the neck region are the scalene group of muscles. So we discussed in the previous class, scalene posterior, medius, anterior. We see in the posterior triangle those muscles, right? And the posterior muscles, these are the deep muscles. And all these deep muscles are covered by trapezius. So these structures are under considered as a vertebral compartment. And just in front of vertebral compartment, there are viscera, which are present in the neck region. So what are these viscera? So the viscera are the pharynx, then larynx. Okay, so posteriorly pharynx and anteriorly larynx, and this pharynx and larynx continues as, see, at the level of 6th cervical vertebra. The pharynx is continuous as esophagus, whereas larynx is continuous with the trachea. Okay, so these are the viscera which are present in the, what is that? Just in front of the vertebral compartment. It includes in the visceral compartment. And what else are present in this visceral compartment? The important glands are present. So what is that important gland? The thyroid and parathyroid. You see here, this is a thyroid gland. Okay, on the posterior border of the lateral lobe of thyroid, we'll see a small pea-sized structure, parathyroid glands. So all these structures are considered in the visceral compartment. Then on either side of visceral compartment, a pair of vascular compartment. So what is this vascular compartment? Is indicated by a carotid sheath. So this vascular compartment is enclosed by carotid sheath, enclosing the three important structures: the carotid system, so arteries, carotid system of arteries, then internal jugular vein. This is the main deep vein of the neck, where it receives most of the superficial veins of the neck. So what is this? Internal jugular vein, and in between there is a vagus nerve on the posterior plane in the carotid sheath. So it represents the vascular compartment of the neck. So all these compartments, so vertebral, visceral, and the vascular compartment. You see, there is a protective facial envelopes. So what is that facial envelope? Here the muscles are covered by the prevertebral fascia, whereas the viscera are covered by pretracheal layer of the fascia. Okay. So what are these two layers? These are the parts of the deep cervical fascia. So in the previous classes we discussed. In the next slides I will discuss what is this deep cervical fascia briefly. So the visceral space is occupied, or compartment is occupied by these viscera and glands. Then vascular compartment occupied by this carotid sheath on either side of the visceral compartment. Besides these structures, the neck contains cervical lymph nodes. So the cervical lymph nodes surrounds the blood vessels. So if the superficial vessels are surrounded by superficial lymph nodes, whereas the deep veins or deep mainly veins are surrounded by the, what is that? Deep cervical lymph nodes. So all these structures among the bones. So what are the bones? Above the skull, in front this is hyoid bone, below is the clavicle and sternum. So among these bones, the muscles are arranged and surrounds all these structures of the neck, and finally it forms a cylindrical shaped structure and covered by a skin. Right? So this is the structure of the neck. Now actual class, dissection of the neck. So what are the dissection measures we are taking here? Right? So coming to the skin incision. So to do the dissection of the neck, we should give on a skin incision first. So what is the skin incision? It's a midline incision, extends from the symphysis mente down to the suprasternal notch. Okay, and the another incision from the suprasternal notch back to the acromion process, means that is the summit of the shoulder. Then upper incision extends from the symphysis mente along the lower border of the mandible, then back to the mastoid process. So these are the skin incisions. Along these three incisions, we are going to reflect the skin. See, this is the reflection of the skin. And immediately reflection of the skin means what is the structure? You are going to see the superficial fascia. Here you identify these are the superficial structures. It includes the superficial vessels and the superficial nerves. They are nothing but supplying the skin. So cutaneous nerves we can see in the superficial fascia. So to appear in the superficial fascia, they must pierce all these structures, superficial fascia, and immediately beneath the structures. So in addition to these superficial structures, means vessels or nerves, what is the other important structure present in this superficial fascia of the neck? By reflection of this superficial fascia we can see. So along the same incision lines, we should reflect this superficial fascia. Now you see, this is the reflection of superficial fascia, and immediately we can identify the subcutaneous muscle. Why I am telling subcutaneous muscle? Because it appears in the superficial fascia. So what is this muscle? Platysma muscle. Here you see, after reflection of the superficial fascia, entire superficial fascia, you identify the quadrilateral shape platysma muscle, subcutaneous muscle. So what is the subcutaneous muscle? Actually, by its nerve supply, we can tell this is a migrated muscle of the face because it is supplied by the facial nerve, the cervical branch of the facial nerve. By doing the dissection in the superficial fascia, exactly at the apex of the parotid. Here you identify this is the apex of the parotid gland. So here, through this apex, the nerve is coming out to supply this muscle. What is this platysma muscle? So the branch is called cervical branch of the facial nerve. So by its innervation, the platysma muscle is a migratory muscle of the face, right? So what is the origin of platysma muscle? It takes origin from the fascia covering these two muscles. Here this is the deltoid and this is pectoralis major. So the fascia covering the pectoralis major and deltoid gives origin to this subcutaneous muscle. So what is that fascia covering? Pectoral fascia and fascia over the deltoid muscle. So that is nothing but deep fascia only. So after taking origin, so what happened? All these fibers are ascends obliquely, not vertically. So by its oblique nature, what happened? It covers the part of the neck, not entire aspect of the neck. Okay. So by which what happened? It forms the roof of the inferior part of the posterior triangle, whereas upper part of the anterior triangle. So that it is not covering the entire side of the neck. Okay. So as it ascends, it is going towards the insert. So what is this? Actually, the most anterior fibers are inserted to the lower border of the mandible. Here you can identify, right? So anterior most fibers are going to insert lower border of the mandible, whereas most posterior fibers, they ascend and have a curve insertion to the angle of the mouth as a risorius muscle. So it drags the angle of the mouth. Okay. So that's the action of the posterior most fibers of the trapezius. Sorry, platysma muscle. Clear? So after superficial fascia, we'll see this is a platysma muscle. Now we are going to reflect this platysma muscle. So immediately beneath that, there is a deep cervical fascia. So in the previous classes, we discussed about this deep cervical fascia. So first, it is a cylindrical envelope for entire neck. So what is the shape of this cervical fascia, deep cervical fascia? Cylindrical. So it is enclosing the muscles on its pores. Here you identify along the anterior median line, it is continuous with the either side. And on reaching the sternocleidomastoid, means anterior border of the sternocleidomastoid, it is splitted. Why it is split is because it is enclosing that muscle. Then along the posterior border of the sternocleidomastoid, the two layers are fused. Again, the single layer extends on the posterior triangle, and on reaching the anterior border of the trapezius muscle, again it splits to enclose the trapezius muscle. After enclosing the trapezius, going back to the posterior median line, where it continues with the opposite same layer. So this is the continuity either side. Whereas superior, it is attached to the lower border of the mandible, then back to the styloid process, then to the mastoid process. Okay, then from the mastoid process to the superior nuchal line, then to the external occipital protuberance. That is the upper extremity. Whereas in the lower part, see, at the suprasternal notch, it is splitted again, enclosing a space which is known as suprasternal space. Then along the upper border of the clavicle, okay, then it is going to cover the trapezius muscle, okay. Then going back to the acromion process, and from the acromion process, it is going back to the vertebra prominens. That is the cervical, seventh cervical spinous process. Okay, so this is the extent of the deep cervical fascia. So why it is known as investing layer? Because on its pores it is enclosing some spaces. Here you see just above the manubrium, suprasternal space. Just above the middle third of the clavicle, supraclavicular space. Right? Okay, so and it is enclosing these muscles, two muscles, sternocleidomastoid muscle and what is this? Trapezius muscle. Okay, whereas it forms a two facial slings. Already you see all these structures are discussed in the previous classes. So in this dissection part, how you will identify this investing layer of the deep fascia. So once you reflect the platysma muscle, immediately you can identify this investing layer of the deep fascia. Clear? And this investing layer, see, just beyond this sternocleidomastoid, it gives a two facial process. So one is visceral layer, otherwise called pretracheal fascia. Here it is forming an enclosure for the viscera present in the neck. Okay. Whereas the prevertebral fascia, it forms a facial covering over the muscles in front of the vertebra and either side of the vertebra, means prevertebral and paravertebral muscles. That's why you see the name given to this is a prevertebral fascia. Clear? So on their course, these pretracheal and prevertebral layers enclosing this vascular compartment. So this facial envelope around the great vessels of the neck, which is known as carotid sheath. So that carotid sheath extends from the base of the skull down to this root of the neck. Okay. So it is enclosing the common carotid artery, internal carotid artery, but not external carotid artery. And the great vein of the neck is the internal jugular vein. So in this way, the deep cervical fascia is forming a facial envelope for the carotid sheath. So after reflection, the deep fascia, what are the structures you can identify? See here, well demarcated muscle diagonally presented in the side of the neck. So what is this muscle? Sternocleidomastoid muscle. So origin, insertion, everything is discussed in the previous classes. So in the practical, you are able to identify what are the insertions, what is the origin. Here you appreciate this is the aponeurotic origin, means a flat tendinous structure. You see, so these fibers are of the sternocleidomastoid taking origin from the clavicle, whereas a slender tendon-like structure. So this is the tendinous origin from the manubrium sternum. So sternal fibers, these are the clavicular fibers. In between a small triangle is there, lesser supraclavicular space, where this is an important landmark for the surgeon. So what is that? We can appreciate or identify the internal jugular vein, where it terminates into the subclavian vein, to where it forms the brachiocephalic vein. Clear? So this is the lesser supraclavicular space. So if you trace this sternocleidomastoid upwards, it is going to insert here. This is a bone, mastoid bone. So sternocleidomastoid. Then actually the sternocleidomastoid is otherwise called sternocleido-occipitomastoid, because by its insertion, if you trace the most posterior fibers, they are going to insert the superior nuchal line. Okay. So this sternocleidomastoid, now it is dividing these triangles, right? In front of muscle, this is the anterior triangle. Behind the muscle is the posterior triangle. But this posterior triangle is limited posteriorly by this anterior border of the trapezius muscle. Identify here, the pointer is showing anterior border of the trapezius muscle. So the upper fibers, they are inserting here. What is this? The lateral 1/3 of the clavicle, the posterior border of the lateral 1/3 of clavicle, where it receives the upper fibers of the trapezius. So this is an insertion. Clear? So posteriorly, what is this boundary? Anterior border of the trapezius muscle. And anteriorly, what is this? Posterior border of the sternocleidomastoid. So what is the importance of these structures? Here you appreciate, if you take exactly the midpoint of the sternocleidomastoid. So this is the midpoint of the sternocleidomastoid. This point is very, very important, where for anatomy, the structures, all the structures which are visible immediately after reflection of the fascia, we can appreciate exactly at this midpoint. Okay, so midpoint of the posterior border of the sternocleidomastoid. Whereas for surgeons, it is also important. Why? Because they will give a anesthesia here, right, for the cervical block. So this landmark and what are the structures immediately beneath the fascia we are going to identify. See, cervical plexus I discussed in the previous classes. So what are those branches exactly at the midpoint? One is ascends obliquely on the surface of sternocleidomastoid. So identify all of you. This is a great auricular nerve. What is this? Great auricular nerve. So this great auricular nerve is coursing obliquely on the surface of sternocleidomastoid towards the angle of mandible. So at the angle of mandible, it further divides into anterior and posterior. So the anterior branch supplies the skin over the angle of mandible, whereas posterior branch supplies the lower part of the pinna, that includes the lobule. Okay, and in front of skin, just in front of the ear and tragus. So all these structures are supplied by this great auricular nerve. So if you want to give an anesthesia to the lobule, we should not give an anesthesia at the directly on the lobule. Okay, so we should select an area for this anesthesia, that is the angle of mandible. Then the other important now, this is a lesser occipital nerve. So it is exactly from this midpoint, it ascends along the posterior border of the sternocleidomastoid. So these are the structures by dissection we are identifying in relation to this sternocleidomastoid, right? So one is obliquely coursing upwards, one is ascending vertically along the posterior border of the sternocleidomastoid. This is a lesser occipital. Name it is lesser occipital because it supplies the skin over the scalp, most posterior part. So the lesser amount, it is not the entire posterior part. Okay, so lesser means there must be a greater occipital. So that greater occipital is supplying the most of the scalp, posterior part of the scalp. So this is a lesser occipital nerve. Then the third important here, you see, this is a transverse cervical cutaneous nerve. It is horizontally passing over the sternocleidomastoid, and on reaching the anterior border of sternocleidomastoid, see, all of you observe the pointer. So what is this? Transverse cervical cutaneous nerve. So at the anterior border, it divides into ascending and descending. It is not restricted to only two branches, upper lower. It is a cutaneous branch. So it may give most of the more number of branches. Okay, plexus like. So, but usually what happens at the anterior border of the sternocleidomastoid, it divides into upper and lower. So there supplies the anterior part of the skin of the neck. Then the other important cutaneous nerve, that is the supraclavicular nerve. So here the supraclavicular nerve divides into lateral branches. This is the lateral branches. All these are bunches of the lateral supraclavicular nerve. And this is the intermediate branch. Here you can identify a nerve is going to pierce the bone. What is this bone? Clavicle. Have you appreciated here? See, this is the intermediate branch of the supraclavicular nerve. Is piercing this clavicle. After that, it is supplying over this skin over this area. And moreover, it supplies the skin. And you see, it is piercing this clavicle bone. So that's why clavicle is otherwise called dermal bone. Okay, because it is pierced by a cutaneous nerve. Then coming to the medial branch. See, this medial branch crosses the clavicle anterior third of the clavicle and reaches the skin over the upper two ribs. Okay, so means at the level of second rib, the skin of anterior part of thoracic case is supplied by the medial branch of the supraclavicular nerve. Moreover, it supplies the joint also. So what is the joint here? Sternoclavicular joint. So all these are cutaneous branches. From where they are coming? All these branches are coming from cervical plexus. So which are formed by the C1 to C4 ventral primary rami of the cervical nerves. Clear? So all these are cutaneous. And in addition, an important vein here. What is this vein? External jugular vein. So the external jugular vein It is formed and just below the ear. Okay, so this is a formation. So how it is formed? The posterior auricular vein and posterior division of the retromandibular vein. Then it descends along the obliquely along the sternocleidomastoid, just 4 centimeters above the clavicle. It pierces the deep fascia, and where it drains into the subclavian vein. So just before draining, means opens into the subclavian vein, it receives the 2 important veins. All of you identify the cursor. You see, this is the anterior jugular vein, and this is the transverse. This is suprascapular vein, and one more vein. It is not visible here. What is that? Sometimes transverse cervical vein and sometimes superficial cervical vein. But these 3 important tributaries of the external jugular vein close to this termination. So this is about the external jugular vein. Clear? So beneath the investing layer of deep cervical fascia, we identify. So all these structures on their course to supply the corresponding structure, they should pierce first investing layer. Then they should pierce platysma. That's why we can appreciate all the structures in the superficial fascia of the neck. Now, as I told, this neck is divided into triangles by means of this sternocleidomastoid. Okay, so sternocleidomastoid means what are the boundaries for this anterior triangle. You see, as I said in the previous slide, the anterior triangle apex is below, whereas base is above. Whereas posterior triangle apex is above, base is below. So now we'll see what are the boundaries for various triangles. And the anterior triangle further divided by means of various muscles. We'll see what are those triangles. Altogether, 3.5 triangles are present in the neck. You see, first we'll see the digastric triangle. Digastric means 2 bellies are enclosing a space and is in a triangular area. So what is this triangle? Digastric. So the digastric muscle is, this is anterior belly and this is posterior belly of digastric. Clear? Anterior belly takes origin from the depression just and the inner aspect of the symphysis membrane. This is the anterior belly. Okay. Then if you trace the anterior belly, it inserted to this tendon. This is the intermediate tendon. And from posterior side, this is a posterior belly of digastric muscle. The posterior belly of digastric takes origin from the mastoid process. There is a notch on the inner aspect of mastoid process for which posterior belly of digastric. So the 2 bellies are interconnected by means of a tendon, intermediate tendon. And this intermediate tendon is, and what is the function of this digastric? It is an elevator of the hyoid bone. So as an elevator of hyoid bone, that muscle should be attached or anchored to the hyoid bone. So how this digastric is anchored? Here you identify. All of you see this cursor, a white line. So that line is representing a fascia in the form of a looped. Okay. So what is this? A fascia loop. It is derived from the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. So on its course, it is covering all the muscles of anterior triangle. So on the course, what happens? It forms a fascial envelope that anchor to the hyoid bone. Okay. So anywhere the structure is modified means for the functional purpose only. So because of that function, what is that? Elevation of the hyoid. The digastric must be anchored to the hyoid. For that, a structural modification is there. That is the fascial loop around the intermediate tendon of the digastric muscle. Clear? Then this triangle. So digastric triangle is bounded antero-inferiorly by the anterior belly, postero-inferiorly by the posterior belly, whereas above is bounded by the lower border of the mandible. Okay, and further it extends back to the mastoid process, imaginary line. So this is the boundary of the digastric triangle. Then coming to the carotid triangle. See, the carotid triangle is bounded by 3 important structures. So above and in front by the posterior belly of digastric. Okay, whereas in front and below, see, this is a line. This is a line representing the a muscle. What is that? Superior belly of omohyoid. You see, this is the superior belly of omohyoid. Please all of you follow the cursor. So what is this? Superior belly of omohyoid muscle, right? And posteriorly, what is that boundary here? I have shown already the posterior belly of digastric. And posteriorly, what is the boundary? The anterior border of the sternocleidomastoid. See, this is anterior border of the sternocleidomastoid. Among these three boundaries, what is this triangle called? Carotid triangle. And why it is named as carotid triangle? Because of its important structures. Here you see important structure you can identify. This is an artery, common carotid artery, right? Then this is the internal jugular vein. In between, this is a nerve, that is vagus nerve. So all these three structures are enclosed by a sheath which is known as carotid sheath. So important content of the carotid triangle is the carotid sheath. Clear? Now, submental triangle is there. If you see the submental triangle for each half of the triangle, it forms only half. Why? Because you see the boundaries of the submental triangle is anteriorly by imaginary line from the symphysis mentae to the hyoid bone. This is imaginary line. Whereas other boundary, see, laterally by the anterior belly of digastric, below by the body of the hyoid bone. Among these three boundaries, this is a triangle. Okay, if you complete the triangle means with the other half. So for each half of the neck, how many triangles? A complete digastric triangle, complete carotid triangle, and one more triangle I will show. And this is a half triangle. What is this? Submental triangle. And the important structure is submental lymph nodes. And the superficial vein is begin from this area only, that is the anterior jugular vein. These are the important structures present in this submental triangle. Okay. Then the other triangle is muscular triangle. So what is a muscular triangle? This limited above and posteriorly by the superior belly of omohyoid, and below and posteriorly by the anterior border of the sternocleidomastoid, and in front by imaginary line from the body of the hyoid bone to the suprasternal notch. So among these three boundaries, I am repeating, what are the three boundaries? Superior belly of omohyoid above and behind, anterior border of sternocleidomastoid below and behind, whereas anteriorly an imaginary line. There is no any demarcating muscle or any structure. It is just an imaginary line, right? So extending from the body of the hyoid bone to the suprasternal notch. So this is a muscular triangle. And no important structure unless these structures. What are the other structures here? Muscles. So these muscles lies below the hyoid bone. So the name given to these muscles is the infrahyoid muscles. So what are these infrahyoid muscles? You see, this is the sternohyoid muscle. Then beneath that, sternothyroid, and further continuation is thyrohyoid, and this is superior belly of omohyoid. So omohyoid, sternohyoid, sternothyroid, thyrohyoid. These muscles are considered as infrahyoid group of muscles. So if you consider these muscles as floor of this triangle, there is no single content in this triangle. Otherwise, these muscles itself are the contents of this muscular triangle. So how many triangles here? Digastric triangle, carotid triangle, submental triangle, muscular triangle. Okay. So how many total? 3.5. See, 1, 2, 3, and this half. So 3.5 triangles we can identify in the anterior triangle. Now, little bit we'll see what are these carotid triangle structures. Already we discussed what are the great vessels of the neck, means blood supply of the neck. Okay. So here I want to discuss what are the important structures. You see, after removal of skin, immediately on the surface of carotid sheath, an important nerve plexus in the form of a nerve loop, which is otherwise called ansa cervicalis. Ansa means it is a looped structure. What is this loop? Cervicalis means the cervical nerves are forming a loop, And what is the location for which? The anterior wall of the carotid sheath. Clear? So on the anterior wall of the carotid sheath, there is a looped structure formed by the cervical mass, which is known as ansa cervicalis. That is the first important content of the carotid sheath. The second important content itself carotid sheath. So carotid sheath is containing, here follow the cursor, this is a common carotid artery. And this common carotid artery is divides into internal carotid artery and this is external carotid artery. But here you see where it is divided, bifurcated exactly at the upper border of the thyroid cartilage. What is the landmark? Exactly at the upper border of the thyroid cartilage, the common carotid artery is divides into internal carotid and external carotid. Here you should remember the external carotid is not a content of carotid sheath. Okay. So what are the contents of carotid sheath means you should explain this common carotid and internal carotid artery. Then what else? The internal jugular vein. And in between a nerve, what is that? Vagus nerve. So these are the three important structures we can identify in the carotid sheath. And here you identify the branches of the external carotid artery. Because in the neck, there is no a single collateral branch from the common carotid artery or internal carotid artery. Clear? So only branches derived from the external carotid artery. That's why to fulfill the nutrition for the neck, what is the other artery is helping us? That is the subclavian artery by giving thyrocervical trunk. Okay. So what are the branches of external carotid artery? If you do this deep dissection of this carotid triangle, we can appreciate all the branches of external carotid artery. See, altogether the external carotid artery gives off 8 branches. 8 named branches are there according to their supply. The first important branch is the ascending pharyngeal artery. See here, the vessel is retracted medially. Otherwise, you can't see this ascending pharyngeal artery. Why? Because it is a medial most branch of the external carotid artery. Clear? So that's why they have separated the artery medialwards. Then we can appreciate this artery. What is that? This is the first branch of external carotid artery is the ascending pharyngeal artery. Then second artery is the superior thyroid artery. You see, the superior thyroid artery gives off, the first important branch is the infrahyoid branch. You see, identify infrahyoid artery. Then it gives off the superior laryngeal artery. Here, this is a superior laryngeal artery. Then it gives off a glandular branch. So that glandular branch reaches the apex of the thyroid gland, where it divides into anterior and posterior branches. We discussed in the thyroid gland in the previous classes, right? So this is about the superior thyroid artery. And the third branch is the lingual artery. Okay, so this is a lingual artery. Then this is just above that, this is a facial artery. So if you find out the anterior aspect of the external carotid artery gives off all 3 branches. See, superior thyroid artery, lingual artery, facial artery. Sometimes you see, here you must know, sometimes the facial artery, lingual artery come as a single trunk. So which is known as linguofacial trunk. Here in this cadaver, see, this is the lingual artery, this is facial artery, separately taking origin from the anterior aspect of the external carotid artery. Clear? Okay. So these branches we can identify in this carotid triangle. Then if you trace further upwards, you see the posterior aspect of the external carotid artery gives off 2 important branches. One is occipital artery, okay, and the upper one is a posterior auricular artery. This is occipital artery. This is posterior auricular artery. Okay. After giving all these branches, so this occipital, posterior auricular and facial also, we identify in the digastric triangle. Then after giving all these branches, just below the ear, at the level of the lobule, what happened? It appears within the substance of the parotid gland. So just in front and below the ear, there is a apex of the parotid. So here the external carotid artery enters the substance, means interior of the gland. So within the gland, what happened? This external carotid artery is bifurcated, otherwise called terminated. So terminates into a larger maxillary artery, and this is smaller superficial temporal artery. So this much we can see in the neck dissection. Okay, this is about the external carotid artery, and this internal carotid artery is not giving any origin to the single structure branch, and it appears in the carotid sheath along with this internal jugular vein and ascends to the base of the skull, where it leaves the neck through the carotid opening, which is otherwise called carotid canal. Okay. So ansa cervicalis, I told in the previous slide. So already you know the formation of the ansa cervicalis. You see, ansa cervicalis, it is formed by the two branches, superior root, inferior root. So what is the superior root? It is given by the hypoglossal nerve, but it is not a fiber from the hypoglossal nerve. The C1 fibers are passing through the hypoglossal nerve. So after some course, what happened? The C1 fibers leaves the hypoglossal nerve and gives off a superior root of the ansa cervicalis, right? And it joins with the inferior root of ansa cervicalis. It is derived from the loop between the C2 and C3. See the ventral primary rami of C1, C2, C3, C4. They are forming the loops, right? So the loop between C2, C3, it is giving a branch which forms the inferior root of the ansa cervicalis, and it forms a loop on this carotid sheath. See, this is a looped structure. So the branch coming from the hypoglossal is a descendens hypoglossal. Branch coming from the cervical nerve is a descendens cervicalis. And the proper loop is the ansa cervicalis. And this total entire ansa is giving the branches to the muscles, suprahyoid and infrahyoid. Why? Because you see, C1, C2, C3, these are involved in this ansa cervicalis. So they are supplying these muscles, means those muscles also derived from the C1, C2, C3 myotomes. Okay. So in like this, here colored structure is, yellow colored structure is the ansa cervicalis. Okay. And the branches coming from this ansa. So this ansa is supplying these. The C1 fibers are supplying geniohyoid muscle. Then C2, C3 fibers are supplying stenohyoid, sternothyroid, thyrohyoid, in addition, superior belly of omohyoid and inferior belly also. So omohyoid is supplied by this ansa cervicalis. Now what is the digastric triangle? See, the digastric triangle is bounded above by the base of the mandible, an imaginary line from this angle of mandible to the mastoid process. And in front below is bounded by this anterior belly of digastric, postero-inferiorly by the posterior belly of digastric. So among these three structures, this triangle is further divided by means of a ligament. Here that ligament is not dissected. It is there but not clearly identified. So what is that ligament? Stylomandibular ligament, from styloid process to the mandible. So that ligament divides the structures present in the digastric triangle into anterior part, posterior part. So all of you follow this cursor. You see, the cursor is showing the superficial part of the submandibular gland. So this is an important structure or a content present in the anterior part of the digastric triangle. Clear? And along with this, just immediately beneath that, we can identify the facial artery takes origin from the external carotid artery and the part of hypoglossal nerve. These three important structures we can identify here. Okay. And the structures which are supplying the mylohyoid, means nerve and vessels to the mylohyoid present in this anterior part of the triangle. Whereas posterior part of triangle is consisting of apex of the parotid gland. Here parotid is reflected, separated. But what is there means this is the lobule and this is tragus. So just in front and below that means this is an area for the apex of the parotid. So apex of parotid gland we can identify. And deep to that, the carotid sheath. So carotid sheath is containing what structures? Laterally internal jugular vein, medially internal carotid artery, and in between vagus nerve. These are the structures. And beside that, the styloid process. And the styloid process, in between the carotid sheath and styloid process, the four cranial nerves, the last four cranial nerves, we can identify in this posterior part of the digastric triangle. That is a very deep dissection. So here I have showing the superficial structures only. Okay. So superficially, what we can identify here? This is the superficial part of the submandibular gland. And this is the facial artery grooving this superficial part of the submandibular gland. Why I am telling superficial part? Because see, the deep part of the submandibular gland is arching backwards along the posterior border of the mylohyoid. So we can't see this deep part of the submandibular gland in the digastric triangle. So what we can see only the superficial part of the submandibular gland. Okay, you can palpate this muscle gland by manual palpation. Okay, just below the base of the mandible. So coming to the posterior triangle. So that is about the anterior triangle. Now posterior triangle. So in the posterior triangle, after reflection of skin and fascia, what immediately we can see? All these superficial structures, right? Then what are the boundaries here? As you see boundaries, sternocleidomastoid, and this is the anterior border of the trapezius. And apex means these two boundaries were merging to the superior nuchal line and based by the middle third of the clavicle. So these are the boundaries of the posterior triangle. And what are the superficial structures? These cutaneous nerves, great auricular nerve, lesser occipital nerve, and supraclavicular nerves with the lateral, intermediate, medial branches, then transverse cervical nerve. Okay. And in addition, what is this? External jugular vein with its tributaries, all tributaries. Most of the tributaries are there, but here in this particular dissection, appreciate these are the terminal tributaries of the external jugular vein. Okay. And this is a deep dissection. You see, further posterior triangle is divided by means of an inferior belly of digastric. Please follow the cursor. This is the inferior belly of digastric. So by this inferior belly, the posterior triangle is further divided above occipital triangle, below supraclavicular, otherwise called subclavian triangle. So why this triangle is named as subclavian? Because of the structure. This is a subclavian artery. Which part of subclavian artery? The third part of subclavian artery. You see the course and branches, everything discussed in the previous classes. So what I am going to discuss here, what are the important branches? See, this is a superficial cervical branch and this is the third part here. Clear? Third part of the subclavian artery. So how the subclavian artery is divided? By means of a muscle. You see, this is scalenus anterior. Now, the floor muscles you can identify here, above downwards. This is the levator scapulae, then scalenus posterior muscle, then scalenus medius muscle, then scalenus anterior. Actually, after reflecting the sternocleidomastoid, we can appreciate this scalenus anterior, unless it is not appreciated in the posterior triangle. So what indicates it's not at all a floor muscle of the posterior triangle. It is a boundary muscle. Okay. So that's why beside that means lateral to the scalenus anterior, the structures are present in the posterior triangle. On the surface of the scalenus anterior, important structure. So what is that? Nerve is phrenic nerve. Okay. And in the supraclavicular triangle, what else you can see? The plexus, brachial plexus. Mainly the superior trunk is present in the occipital, but the middle trunk and lower trunk we should identify in this supraclavicular triangle. And in front and below this artery, third part of subclavian artery, what is this vein? Subclavian vein. So where the internal jugular vein and subclavian vein joins to form the brachiocephalic vein. Okay, so these are the structures present in the posterior triangle. Now, as I told, the anterior median structures of the vein. So the knowledge of these structures are important to rescue the patients. So like very severe conditions. So what is that? Acute respiratory obstructions. So what are those structures are useful for you? We'll see. So the After removal of skin and fascia, this anterior line presents from above downwards. You see, this midline extends from the symphysis mentae to the suprasternal notch. Okay. So what are these structures? Exactly in the midline from the symphysis mentae to the hyoid bone, a midline raphe is extending. So it is a fibrous raphe. Why? Because the two sides of mylohyoid muscles which are interlacing in the midline, where it forms the median raphe. Okay, because of this fibrous tissue, it is forming a line that indicates the where the junction between the two mylohyoids. Clear? So this is the median raphe extending from the symphysis mentae to the hyoid bone. And just beyond that, what is the structure? Hyoid bone at the level of third cervical vertebra. And between this hyoid and thyroid, there is a membrane, thyrohyoid membrane. Okay, and this thyroid cartilage we can identify in the midline at the level of fourth and fifth cervical vertebra. And beyond that, what is the landmark I had told? That is a cricoid cartilage at the level of sixth cervical vertebrae. Between thyroid and cricoid, what is that membrane? Cricothyroid membrane. And beyond that is the isthmus of the thyroid gland. And above that you see either side a bilateral muscle, that is a cricothyroid muscle. In the second picture you can identify. Here you see this is hyoid bone and this is a thyroid cartilage. In between this is thyroid membrane, and between thyroid and cricoid this is a cricothyroid membrane. And beyond that you see this is the first tracheal cartilage, and second, third, fourth is overlapped by the isthmus of the thyroid gland. Clear? So the suprahyoid muscles means, as I told previously, digastric, stylohyoid, genohyoid, mylohyoid muscle. Whereas infrahyoid, thyrohyoid, omohyoid and stenohyoid muscles. So what is the importance of knowledge about these anterior median line structures of the neck? See, fracture of the hyoid bone. Usually the hyoid bone is not fractured. Why? Because it is well protected in front by the mandible, behind by the cervical spines. But however, there is a fracture, and mostly in strangulations. So in 1/3 of people, due to strangulation, the hyoid bone may be fractured, and it is therefore a significant postmortem finding. Clear? And also some the traumas, there may be a chance of the hyoid bone fracture. So what are the clinical features? There is a pain on speaking, swallowing and breathing, because these movements are because of the upward and downward, means elevation or depression of the hyoid bone. So they are involved in this fracture of the hyoid bone. So I told emergency, what is the important feature? So emergency airway puncture, otherwise called cricothyroidectomy. So what is this cricothyroidectomy? It's an incision made through the skin. So first you should identify the cricoid cartilage. Just above that there is a membrane, cricothyroid membrane. So they will give an incision to this cricothyroid membrane horizontally to establish a patent airway during these certain life-threatening situations. Okay, so that is about the cricothyroid. And another procedure also there, that is the tracheostomy. So here it may be a low or high tracheostomy. So for which you should know the isthmus. So above that, what are the landmarks? So take a point 1 centimeter below the arch of cricoid cartilage. So that indicates the upper, means a level for the upper tracheostomy. And below the isthmus of thyroid means for lower tracheostomy. Okay. So tracheostomy means it's an opening made. Why? Because in case of the what happened, acute respiratory distress means obstruction, they will introduce a tracheal tube into which. So for which they should open this trachea. So what is that? It's otherwise called tracheostomy. Clear? And see this picture. What is this? Giraffe. So can you see how many cervical vertebra may be present? Here only 7. Why? Because you see, always the function modifies the structure, but not the structures means in the form of number. It is only elongation of the cervical vertebra. So any vertebral structure means 7 cervical vertebra. Okay, clear? Thank you.